same neighborhood, where their lives were intertwined in every way. From the moment they could walk, they were inseparable. They played in the same parks, went to the same school, and shared every milestone. Their friendship was a constant, like the sun rising every day. Their favorite memory was the summer they spent building treehouses. Ayaan, the more adventurous of the two, would climb up the tallest tree, while Riya, ever the planner, would help him map out their secret hideout. Together, they created their own world in the branches, a place where no one could reach them. The day Riya's family moved across the city felt like the end of an era. The thought of not being neighbors anymore crushed both their hearts. The goodbye was more than just a farewell to a home. It was the loss of a shared childhood. Riya's eyes were filled with tears as she looked at Ayaan, but he promised her that nothing would change, that they would always stay friends, no matter the distance. Despite the promise, neither could deny that something was shifting. A subtle undercurrent of longing that neither fully understood. Their childhood was over, but their bond was not. As they entered their teens, they kept in touch through letters and phone calls, always eager to share their lives with one another. They talked about their school experiences, their dreams, and of course, their favorite thing, painting. Riya had a passion for realistic landscapes, while Ayaan loved abstract art. It was their shared love for creativity that kept them connected. But deep down, something was changing, something unspoken. Puberty brought a whirlwind of emotions and changes to their lives. Riya found herself more self-conscious as her body began to change. She could no longer ignore the way Ayaan's eyes lingered on her for a moment longer than usual. And Ayaan, too, noticed the way Riya had grown into a young woman, her body more curvaceous, her voice deeper, more melodious. He often found himself lost in thought, wondering what these new feelings meant. Yet, they maintained their easy friendship. They continued to share their thoughts and dreams, but something felt different now. When they would meet, their conversations were laced with an undercurrent of tension that neither of them knew how to address. One day, as they sat by the lake near their childhood treehouse, Ayaan broke the silence. "Do you believe in love, Riya?" he asked, his voice tinged with something unrecognizable. Riya, caught off guard, hesitated. She had never thought about love in such a way before. They had always been best friends, nothing more, nothing less. But the question lingered in her mind for days, leaving her unsettled. Did Ayaan see her as more than just a friend? Or was she reading too much into things? That night, lying in bed, Riya realized that she was beginning to care for Ayaan in a way that went beyond friendship. She couldn't pinpoint when it had started, but the feelings were undeniable. However, she kept these thoughts to herself, not wanting to risk the friendship that had been her constant source of comfort. The farewell party was meant to be a celebration of everything they had accomplished in their school years, but for Riya, it felt like a final chapter closing. Ayaan had become more than a friend. He had become the person she relied on, the one who made her laugh, who knew all her secrets. But now he was preparing to propose to another girl, someone from their class. Riya tried to ignore the growing knot in her stomach, but it gnawed at her with every passing minute. The idea of Ayaan with someone else felt like a betrayal. She couldn't imagine him holding someone else's hand, sharing his dreams with someone else. But how could she tell him? How could she explain the depth of her feelings? As Ayaan stood before the crowd, about to announce his proposal, Riya couldn't hold back. She rushed to the stage, her heart pounding in her chest. "Ayaan, don't do this," she cried, her voice breaking. The entire room fell silent as Ayaan turned to face her, confusion and concern written on his face. Tears streamed down Ria's face as she stood before him, unable to stop herself. Ayaan took a step forward, his own eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Why are you crying?" he whispered, his voice full of concern. Asterisk. I don't want to lose you," Riya confessed, her voice trembling. It was the first time she had ever voiced the truth she had kept hidden for so long. And in that moment, Ayaan understood. He took her hand, and in a quiet, private moment away from the crowd, he told her that he had no intention of proposing to anyone else. She was everything to him. For the first time, the truth was out in the open. Riya smiled through her tears. Overwhelmed by the weight of their shared confession, she had always known that they were meant to be, but now it felt real. The days after the farewell were a blur of emotions for both Ayaan and Riya. They both felt the shift in their relationship, but neither knew how to address it. They continued their preparations for their exams, with Ayaan looking after Riya, making sure she didn't overwork herself. But despite their best efforts to pretend things hadn't changed, everything was different now. One evening, as they sat in the school courtyard, Ayaan suddenly asked, "What about your Prince Charming? What kind of love story do you want?" Riya froze. The question caught her off guard, and for a moment she couldn't think of a single thing to say. Was this the moment? Was he asking her about their future together? But instead of answering directly, Riya simply said, "I want a love story, like a fairy tale." Ayaan smiled, a knowing look in his eyes. He had been waiting for this moment, hoping that Riya would admit her feelings. But he also knew that she wasn't ready yet, so he decided to wait. He would create a fairy tale for her, but only when she was ready to embrace it. Life continued to be a series of emotional highs and lows for Riya and Ayaan, as they navigated the tricky waters of adolescence and early adulthood. But their bond remained strong, and they made plans to stay close, no matter where life took them. But one fateful day, everything changed. Ayaan was involved in a life-threatening accident while trying to save Riya from a speeding car. His body was bruised and battered, and Riya was beside herself with worry. The hospital felt like a cold, alien place, and she couldn't bear the thought of losing him. As Ayaan lay unconscious, Riya stayed by his side, refusing to leave. She couldn't stop blaming herself. If she had just been more careful, if she had just stepped aside, maybe he wouldn't have been hurt. For days, Ayaan's condition remained critical. Riya spent every waking moment at the hospital, her heart in her throat with each passing second. But she couldn't deny that there was something comforting about being there with him. Even in his unconscious state, she felt closer to him than ever. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Ayaan woke up. The first thing he saw was Riya, her face streaked with tears, but also filled with relief. And in that moment, Ayaan knew what he had to do. He had promised her that their love story would be a fairy tale, and he was ready to make that promise come true. With Ayaan's recovery well underway, Riya found herself more and more certain about her feelings. She realized that she had always loved him, but the accident had forced her to confront it. She had never truly feared losing anyone until now. The thought of living without Ayaan felt like an impossible future. Valentine's Day was approaching, and Riya felt an overwhelming need to confess her love. But she didn't want to do it just in any ordinary way. She wanted it to be special, memorable. And so, with a plan in mind, she waited for the right moment. Meanwhile, Ayaan was planning his own confession. He had been secretly preparing for this moment, hoping that Riya would finally acknowledge their feelings, and when she did, he was ready to make their fairy tale come true. Valentine's Day arrived, but Riya's heart was heavy. She had waited so long for this moment, and it had finally come. But with the weight of Ayaan's accident lingering in her mind, she wasn't sure how she would manage. Her thoughts kept spiraling as she walked through the hospital halls. She had planned to confess her feelings on this special day, but she was uncertain if Ayaan was ready. The fear of disrupting their bond held her back from being fully open. But when she reached his room, everything changed. Ayaan had been awake for a while, and his physical recovery was progressing. He was looking better than he had in days, his color returning to normal, though his movements were still slow. When she entered the room, a soft, bright smile crossed his face, and she couldn't help but feel relieved. He was recovering, and that alone felt like a victory. She sat beside him, holding his hand, her heart pounding in her chest. "Ayaan," she whispered softly, her voice filled with emotion. Ayaan looked at her intently, his expression serious. He knew what she was about to say, and he had been waiting for this moment too. The air between them was thick with anticipation. "I love you, Ayaan," she confessed, her voice cracking. "I love you more than anything. You've always been my best friend, but somewhere along the way, I realized I need more than that. I want you ... forever." Tears welled in Ayaan's eyes as he absorbed her words. There was a mixture of relief, happiness. Slowly, he reached for her hand and gently pulled her closer. "Riya," he whispered, his voice raw with emotion, "I love you too. I always have." And then Ayaan did something that made her heart stop. He slowly pulled up his shirt sleeve to reveal a tattoo on his chest, a tattoo of her name. Riya's eyes widened in shock as she traced the letters with her fingers. Her name etched permanently. On his body, "Ayaan, he smiled, cutting her off. "You've been a part of me for so long, Riya. I wanted to make sure you knew just how important you are to me. But that wasn't all." Ayaan turned around, revealing the back of his shirt, where a stunning painting of her face had been inked. Riya gasped in disbelief. The painting was a perfect likeness, captured with such detail that it felt like she was looking into a mirror. "I wanted to remind you," Ayaan said, his voice shaking, "that you are my world. I don't want anyone else but you, Riya." heart was full. She had never imagined anything like this Ayaan had truly made her feel like a princess in her very own fairy tale. But Riya wasn't finished. She had her own surprise for him. She pulled her ring finger from under her sleeve, revealing a small, delicate ring with Ayaan's name engraved on it. "And I made sure to carry you with me too," she said softly, her eyes locked with his. "In my heart, always." Ayaan's breath caught in his throat as he saw the ring. He pulled her into a tight embrace, his heart racing with a mix of relief and joy. Everything had fallen into place. Their love story, once filled with uncertainty, was now an undeniable truth. The future stretched out before them, full of promise. With their confession, Riya and Ayaan's relationship shifted into new territory. They were no longer just best friends, they were partners, navigating the complex landscape of love. But as they grew closer, the weight of their pasts began to surface. Riya started noticing small things about Ayaan that hinted at a deeper history, things he had never shared with her. Ayaan's quiet moments of reflection, his occasional hesitancy when talking about his family, and the unspoken sadness in his eyes whenever the subject of his past relationships came up. All of these raised questions in Riya's mind. She knew Ayaan had always been open with her, but she also sensed that he had hidden parts of his heart, parts he was afraid to share. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of Riya's apartment, watching the city lights twinkle below, Riya decided to confront him. "Ayaan, is there something you're not telling me?" she asked softly. "I feel like there's a part of you I don't know, something from before we confessed." Ayaan looked away, his jaw tightening. It was clear he had been expecting this conversation, but he wasn't ready to face it. After a long pause, he finally spoke, his voice quiet. "There are things from my past, Riya, that I never wanted to bring into our relationship. Things that could change how you see me." Riya was silent, waiting for him to continue. "There was someone before you," he confessed. "Someone I thought I loved, but it was a toxic relationship. I let her control me, manipulate me, and I lost myself in it. When I met you, I swore to myself that I wouldn't make the same mistakes. You showed me what real love is: uncomplicated, pure, and true." Riya's heart ached as she listened to his words. She could feel the pain in his voice, the deep scar that this past relationship had left on him. She reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "Ayaan, your past doesn't change how I feel about you. I love you for who you are now, and that's all that matters. I don't want to lose you, Riya. I'm scared that my past will hurt us." Riya smiled, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. "Ayaan, nothing from your past can change what we have now. We're building our own future together, and nothing is stronger than what we share." And in that moment, Ayaan realized that Riya was right. He had spent so long trying to protect her from the mistakes of his past that he had forgotten one crucial thing: love was about trust, vulnerability, and moving forward, not being held back by the past. Months passed since their confessions, and Ayaan and Riya found themselves building a life together. They enrolled in the same college, choosing courses that would help them pursue their shared dream of opening an art gallery together. Riya's love for painting had always been her passion, and Ayan's creativity and business acumen made them the perfect team. Their relationship blossomed, but the path wasn't without obstacles. There were still moments of doubt, of jealousy, and of growing pains. But they faced every challenge together, and with every passing day, their bond grew stronger. Ayaan and Riya had learned that love wasn't just about grand gestures. It was about the small, everyday moments of care, of support, and of understanding. One summer evening, as they stood together on the balcony of their apartment, overlooking the city they now called home, Ayaan turned to Riya with a serious look on his face. "Riya, I've been thinking," he began. "We've been through so much together, and I can't imagine my life without you. I want to spend every day with you, forever. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Ria's eyes as she nodded, a smile spreading across her face. "Yes, Ayaan, with you too." And so they began to plan their future together. They knew that life wouldn't always be easy, but they also knew that as long as they had each other, they could face anything. Their love story had come full circle, from childhood friends to soulmates, and now to partners in life. Ayaan and Ria's fairy tale was no longer just a dream, it was their reality. And as they stood hand in hand, looking out at the bright future ahead, they knew that their love would only grow stronger with time, a love that would last for a lifetime.